Hello and welcome back to the Grandmaster division of the International Championship. For the end of the year, or maybe for some of you as a start into the new year, I have a very special game for you because it might be the most high level game that I've ever been part of. It's a 4-player game and I will be playing against Wawrzyniec, Airren and Genghisip. So it will be a game between the number 1, number 2, number 3 and number 7 spot of the clicker rating. And also, all of the players involved in this game have already won the International Championship. So I think that might indeed be the most high level game that I've ever been part of. And I mean, in my first season of the International Championship, all of those players also were in the league, so maybe there was a similar match. But at this point, only Genghisip out of those players had an International Championship title, and also I think Wawrzyniec and I weren't that high up in the clicker rating at this point. So at this point, yeah, might have been not as much a high level match as it is now. Yeah, so that should be very exciting. And also when we take a look at the standings, if you remember the last video, maybe if you paid very close attention, then you might notice that in the standings that you see here, one more game has been finished compared to the standings that you have seen in the last video, because I didn't make a screenshot in time, and now for those standings there has one more game finished, and in this game, Wawrzyniec was able to win against Airren, PV4 and Footloop. So, yeah, Wawrzyniec doesn't have a bad position, had 8 points now after 2 games finished. I have 6 points, which is also very fine. Genghisip 5 and Airren 4, so overall very close, and everything is still possible for all of the 4 players involved in the next game. And now, without further ado, we are gonna take a look at the game. In this game, I'm in the 4th position, and first of all, we are gonna take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that in H3 there's definitely some lab synergy with Sid Meier, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. There's also the space flight. We have the Hollywood and Chaplin, but no other theater leader in H3 but Bach and Shakespeare in H2, so maybe it is possible to set up for this. We also have Gandhi, we have Mandela and Coubertin, who maybe both work very nicely with arenas. Of course, Mandela also with other sources of happy faces. Then we have the Red Cross. In H2, we have no ocean liner service, no Suez Canal, there's also no James Cook, but we have Harvard College, Railroad and Statue, of more economical wonders, and Louvre and Eiffel Tower, so both of the culture wonders. As I said, we have Shakespeare and Bach, so some culture synergy. We have Newton and Nobel for some science. Maria Theresa can of course be very strong. Also, we have 2 military action leaders. In H1, we also have 2 military action leaders with Joan of Arc and Jan Žižka. There's Michelangelo with the Machu Picchu, but no St. Peter's Basilica. Then there is Genghis Khan, Barbarossa. Those, of course, can also help with the strength. Eleanor and also Gutenberg is there. Airren is in the first position, and he will grab Boudica as the choice between Boudica and Hippocrates. And I think I would also go for Boudica here in 4-player games. I think she can just be very, very strong. Wawrzyniec goes for Hippocrates and the Elven Growth. Genghisip, interestingly, will go for the Colosseum over the pyramids, so he definitely goes for a lot of military, and then of course the additional military action might be worth more than the additional civil action from the pyramids. Also the happy face, of course, is quite useful. But I also was quite happy about getting the pyramids. I can now take rich land and the pyramids. Of course I thought about if there is maybe a case for taking a leader here, but then I would leave the pyramids to Airren and Wawrzyniec. Now that I take the pyramids, it also will mean that there is no wonder available for one civil action for Airren. Maybe the same will be true for Wawrzyniec, so maybe they have to grab some HA yellow cards or some stuff. So that's another reason why I think I have to take the pyramids near. It's just very nice to get pyramids with the rich land. It makes it more likely that I can finish the pyramids very quickly. And then Airren and Wawrzyniec already have the leader, only Genghisip has no leader, and with that it should be very, very likely that I will get either Ashoka or Homer, and I think both of those leaders work very nicely together with the pyramids, and so hopefully I will have a fine start. Then some wonders come out of the deck: Rome Roads, Hanging Gardens, and the Colossus. Airren is not willing to pay 2 civil actions for one of those wonders, instead he grabs the Elven Growth. starts going for Boudica and just builds the mine, can maybe grab one of those wonders at the next turn. Wawrzyniec goes for Hippocrates, builds the lab, increases population. He also isn't willing to pick one of those wonders for 2 civil actions. Instead, he grabs the rich land. He can use that very nicely to build his 3rd mine at the next turn. Genghisip is willing to go for Hammurabi for 2 civil actions instead of one of those leaders for 1 civil action. He has the Colosseum, and with that, of course, that's a nice combination with Hammurabi. And then he builds a mine and he increases his population. That leaves me the Engineering Genius on 1 civil action, so that's definitely something interesting, especially because with having this rich land, taking the Engineering Genius means that I can actually finish the pyramids already at the next turn. Now, so I definitely want to get this mine in. There are also 1 copy each of swordsmen and knights in the row. And of course, it is definitely not bad to already have a military technology, but I think I really wanted to rush out the pyramids here. I think that should give me quite a lot of value. And so I wanted to take the Engineering Genius. And then I have to choose now what leader I want to go for. Of course, I could also just grab an H1 military tech, but I think missing on the leader is just too costly. The thing is, at the moment I would probably just take the leader in the hand and then increase my population, and it works fine with both of the leaders. So Shoko doesn't give me any value this turn anyway, and the same is true for Homer, so just taking them in hand for now is definitely quite fine. The thing is, if I take Ashoka in hand at the next turn, as I said, I kinda want to finish the pyramids, then I will use the Engineering Genius, and if I then elect Ashoka, again, I have only 1 civil action and left, and I can only take 1 color in hand, so I probably also won't get any value out of Ashoka at the next turn, unless I delay the pyramids, but that's maybe something I don't want to do. And because of this, I thought that Homer is the better choice here. I think with finishing the pyramids very, very quickly anyway, I just can maybe replace him very quickly. And if not, I mean, in 4-player games, you often have to build some military early on, and then the additional resources that Homer will offer for the military might also not be too bad. So I think, together with the pyramids, Homer is definitely a very fine leader, especially now that I can finish it very, very quickly anyway. And so I made the decision to go for Homer. And there's also a small other reason. It's not that big of a reason, because I think in a 4-player game you should mostly focus on your own. But as you sadly can see, there is a Universitas coming down the row, and Airren hasn't committed to a wonder yet. The same is true for Wawrzyniec, and I thought that Airren very, very likely will go for this early Universitas. And now that I take Homer, the Rome roads will be in the discard spot in Airren's turn, meaning that if Airren goes for the Universitas, which I thought that he might want to do anyway, then Wawrzyniec will miss out on the Rome roads, has to go for Hanging Gardens or Colossus, or has to miss out on an HA wonder, and it's also a small reason why I think Homer is better here than Ashoka. And then I draw the Fighting Band and the Enslave. Airren seats, and the development of politics is revealed, so some additional cards. I have now even more tactics, meaning it would be very nice to get the knights. Sadly, I missed out on the first copy already, and the second copy is also already on the row. Airren takes the swordsman. He wants to have a military tech, but taking knights and Universitas would be very difficult, so he just takes swordsman, takes the Universitas, and starts building on the Universitas. He also took 1 resource of Boudica, maybe making it even more likely that he can rush out a Universitas at the next turn already, with the right developments maybe revealed. Wawrzyniec seats, and as you also can see, the 3rd copy of Knights is also already in the row. That makes it for certain that I will have the chance to grab 1 copy of Knight at my next turn, and with having the Phalanx tactic in hand, I think that's definitely something I should do. Wawrzyniec opens the development of settlement, builds his mine now, takes the Knights, takes the cultural heritage, and he will go for the Hanging Gardens. There's no Suez Cannon, there's no Cook, and I think then the Hanging Gardens is the better wonder than the Colossus. Maybe he could also wait for an H1 wonder, but I think he didn't have that much to do with his last civil action anyway, and I think the Hanging Gardens can be a fine wonder. Genghisip goes for lab, takes the Code of Laws for 2, the Knights, and also the Rich Land with that. And the last copy of Knights will fall down to 1 civil action for me even, so that should be quite nice for me. As my turn, I want to finish the pyramids. There is an early Yanshishka. Of course, it could be nice getting Yanshishka, Knights, and Phalanx. but it's just not really possible. If I grab knights any on Shishka, then I have to build a warrior to get out of corruption, and I think that just wouldn't be worth it at all. It would just be too costly. Instead, I'd rather want to rush out the pyramids. I definitely want to grab the knights, and then with my last civil action I could either take one of those cards or I can elect Homer. And I think I don't really need those cards. I mean, Warfare can be a fine technology because there's only one copy of Strategy available in 4-player games. But I went for the Pyramids at the cost of delaying the lab for one more turn, meaning that I don't have the most science available, so I think it will be very questionable if I will have enough science. And then there's also the printing press. I mean, there's Shakespeare, there's no Leonardo, there is the Hollywood at the end. So maybe with not having to be committed to the second lab yet, it could be an idea, but I think in 4-player games that's just most of the times too greedy, and especially with playing behind Genghisip, who very often goes for a lot of military, it's maybe even more greedy, so I didn't want to grab one of those cards, and instead I just elected Homer. And then I kept one colonization card and a phalanx tactic. I draw the pestilence and the knowledge of the ancients. Airren seeds again, and then the development of markets is revealed. He takes the resources from that, and that will allow him to finish the pyramids already, so he has a very early, Universitas of course, so he has a very early Universitas, and that is definitely quite a strong start for him. And he will go for the warfare, because he has definitely some nice science production now, and it could be a helpful technology, especially now that he missed out on all copies of knights. Wawrzyniec opens the development of crafts, and he will go for Jan Žižka for 2 civil actions. He has Hippocrates, so a leader that he wants to replace very quickly, and he replaces him already this turn, doesn't want to wait for the 3rd Hippocrates token. He goes for the knights, increases population, builds 1 knight, is now at 3 strength. He doesn't reveal a tactic yet, so maybe he hasn't drawn one, or he wants to draw more cards now, maybe hoping to get an event or something. Yeah, but with that he is the strongest. Maybe the event will be flipped relatively soon, and he also maybe just needed to do this to get out of corruption. Now I was really hoping that I maybe will get Barbarossa, because there is the development of markets. I could take more food, I could replace Homer, maybe use the resources in one time for 1 Barbarossa activation, and I should easily be able to do 3 Barbarossa activations, and that can just be very strong. But Genghisip goes often for a lot of military, so he definitely knows what Barbarossa can do, and so sadly he will go for him. He also has the Colosseum, which is of course a nice combination. With Barbarossa has the knights in hand, also has some food saved up, so the next turn he can maybe start developing knights, and could also go for 2 Barbarossa activations immediately, and so sadly I will miss out on Barbarossa. And Genghisip interestingly reveals the medieval army tactic. It's definitely somewhat interesting, because it isn't to keep more cards in hand, he could have kept it just in hand, and now he reveals it to Wawrzyniec, so yeah, I mean maybe he wants to reveal it at the next turn anyway, maybe it will allow him to build more military. For example, now he can do 2 Barbarossa activations while still using the ability of Hammurabi, so probably that's already enough reason to reveal it, but I wasn't too happy about it, because that means that Wawrzyniec will very soon will have a strong tactic for Jan Žižka. But on the other hand, maybe I also have the chance now to reveal my tactic without feeling bad about giving it to Wawrzyniec. This turn I built a lab, so I finally get my science production going. I want to start using the resource of Homer, because Wawrzyniec has some potential. I mean, the next turn he probably can't do that much already, but maybe he's drawn a tactic now and will go up to some strength. Maybe the development of trade routes will be revealed and he can finish Hanging Gardens, build another knight, and then if he has drawn a medieval army tactic for himself, then he could even go for more strength. And of course Genghisip with Barbarossa also might go for some strength, so I think I will need some additional strength very soon, so I just wanted to start using Homer to build my military. The next turn I can maybe build 1 knight, reveal the phalanx tactic. And then to get out of corruption I also have to increase my population. And then I was definitely eyeing this copy of alchemy and this copy of iron, because that would allow me to upgrade my economy. However, as I said, I definitely thought that I probably have to go for more military at my next turn, meaning that I have to develop the knights. The next turn I will be at 5 science, meaning after I develop the knights I will be very very low on science, meaning if I grab alchemy or iron now I don't really have the science to go for it anyway. I mean there's development of science and raid roots still in the deck, so if those are revealed then maybe I can, maybe I will have a shot at going for those at the turn after I go for knights, but it just seemed not that likely. And yeah, and because of that, instead of taking alchemy or iron, I went for the breakthrough, and then also for one more yellow card I went for the rich land. The moment I don't know whether I will get maybe alchemy or iron, but the rich land of course can also be used for food upgrade and for resource upgrade, urban growth only for lab upgrades, maybe if I want to go for a happy face solution, so I thought a rich land is maybe the more useful technology, the more useful yellow card for me. And now at the next turn when I will develop the knights, I can develop those with the breakthrough, meaning that after this I will have more science left. Those are the first copies of alchemy and iron, meaning there will be more copies hopefully coming down the row. And I would have to pay 2 civil actions now, it's not like it is available for very cheap. I definitely can have hope that one of those techs will be available for me later on, in 2 turns after I will have gone for knights, and then hopefully I will be able to upgrade my economy, but with having the breakthrough I also will have a shot at actually having enough science to go for one of those upgrades. And yeah, then as I said, I take the rich land here. That leaves Airren a very strong possibility. With the urban growth, he could maybe just build an alchemy directly, then he will have a lot of science production, but having lots of science production can definitely be very strong. And so I thought about if I maybe because of that want to take the alchemy away, but then he can go for iron, so I don't think it makes sense to make my turn weaker just to deny him this option. And so I just went for the breakthrough in the rich land. And now that Genghisip has revealed his tactic anyway, I thought I can do the same, because that allows me to keep my colonization card in hand and one event card. I wanted to keep one event card because there's Eleanor coming down the row, and depending on whether other leaders will be available, maybe I will just have to grab her just to make sure that I get a leader in time to replace Homer. And she is also just a fine leader, maybe I can use Homer for 1 or maybe even 2 more turns for his resources, and then I can switch to Eleanor. And then it could be nice to have an event to see. The knowledge of the ancients could also be quite nice with me having not the most science production, or not the most science saved up, so I wanted to keep this knowledge of the ancients event. Also with Airren having only Universitas, there's at least one opponent who doesn't get that much out of it. Airren indeed will go for the alchemy. With me building this warrior here, will get 2 resources out of Boudica this turn. He takes the urban growth for the second upgrade, will build 1 alchemy directly, and he can use the resources of Boudica to build 1 warrior. Wawrzyniec will finish the Hanging Gardens this turn, but he doesn't have enough resources to also build another knight. So instead he just takes the iron. With the cultural heritage he maybe has a shot at going for the iron already at the next turn. Genghisip seeds, and then the development of agriculture reveals even more food that he can maybe use for Barbarossa. He will develop the knights. He will switch to Barbarossa, but interestingly he doesn't use the military action of Hammurabi, so maybe he didn't find a nice use for the additional civil action. He will use Barbarossa for 1 knight, even for another knight goes up to 7 strength, and then he has still 3 civil actions left. He grabs the monarchy, maybe he can do a revolution very nicely with Barbarossa, grabs the bread and circuses, and builds another farm, so to get some more food with Barbarossa maybe. The bread and circuses will help him as a happy face solution. There's also Pierre in the game, so it could also be nice to have this in the late game. And then now with his last civil actions he can't really do anything, so if he wants to do the turn like this, then of course it makes sense to not use the ability of Hammurabi, and at least he will draw 1 more card. And he could have had a shot at taking the Taj Mahal, but with him only being on bronze mines, it's maybe the better decision to pass on it. But it could have been an idea, because there's no ocean liner service in H2, but yeah, and it just would block the wonder spot, would block him from taking any other wonders, and maybe it's not worth it to take it only because there's the chance that he will have enough resources available at some point to finish it. Now it's my turn, and at my turn I don't want to see it. I could see it, but I will grab Eleanor this turn, and then I rather wanted to keep the event in hand for her. And if I see it now, Of course, it is maybe in the next deck and could help me, but now with the breakthrough and I will have 4 science after my turn, I will grab this alchemy, so I maybe don't need a science that much very quickly. And also, it means now that I will build 1 knight, I will draw 1 more card, meaning if I switch to Eleanor, then at the next turn I will get 1 culture from this card, so the 1 culture from seeding also isn't an argument to seed it. I mean, just the culture is of course not very often the argument to seed, but I mean, if you seed a lot, it also generates some culture, and that's definitely also something to be aware of. Then this turn I go for 1 knight, I can use the resource of Homer again to build 1 knight, I want to get out of corruption, then I have 3 civil actions left, and I grab Eleanor. I made a decision to keep Homer for 1 more turn, to be able to use his resources 1 more time for another knight. With increasing my population at the next turn, I will be able to not have any uprising issues in H2, hopefully, when I lose the 2 yellow tokens. And also, with the next knight only costing 2 resources, thanks to Homer, I will have 3 resources left, and those 3 resources I can invest into the alchemy, so I can go for 1 more knight, and for 1 upgrade to alchemy. You can see that I now, this turn, have the chance to grab the alchemy even for 1 civil action. Of course, I couldn't have known this at the last turn, but it just, actually it was 2 turns ago, no, it was 1 turn ago, so, but yeah, I just, with that many copies of those technologies being left, there was the chance that I can grab 1 of those, maybe for 1, maybe for 2 civil actions, so now I get now the alchemy and can go for this at the next turn, and then I have 1 more civil action left. I could just grab the patriotism. I also definitely thought about the Silk Road here. I thought about if I maybe can make this Silk Road work with having an additional civil action from the pyramids and with having some yellow cards that I can maybe take, but it just didn't work out that nicely, and so I instead rather just went for the alchemy. And then for my last civil action, I have the choice between patriotism and rich land, and I made the decision to go for the rich land because at some point I definitely want to go for resource upgrades or food upgrades. Patriotism could also be nice, but no, it doesn't allow an additional upgrade to alchemy the next turn very likely, unless of course there will be development of trade routes revealed, and so I rather went for the rich land, which will be more action efficient. Then I draw the Good Harvest. Airren will seed, and the development of Civil Life is the last event of the HA deck. Airren will take the patriotism, goes for the second upgrade, is now at 6 science production, very early, increases his population, will develop the swordsman, and builds 1 swordsman, also has developed the warfare, is now at 5 strength, and he can use the resources of Boudica again very nicely. Wawrzyniec will take the monarchy, takes the Machu Picchu as well. He has the Airren in hand already. Maybe he is also the shot at getting an irrigation. There are 2 copies of this technology still in the deck. He will build 1 knight, and now he will copy the medieval army tactic, going up to 9 strength, and also finally getting some culture out of Genghisip. And at the next turn, maybe he can just do a revolution to monarchy and build even another knight. Genghisip offers the naval trade agreement to Wawrzyniec. Genghisip gets 1 additional colonization force. Wawrzyniec gets more blue tokens. That allows him even to do a revolution without building a knight. And Genghisip does a revolution this turn, and he can get out of corruption with using Barbarossa for another warrior. That also makes sure that he will be the strongest. And no, he misses out on the Airren, but just doing this revolution is definitely not bad. He developed the Britain circuses, I think, with the development of civil life, and has now 5 civil actions and even 4 military actions, which is of course quite nice to have with having Barbarossa. This turn again, I didn't want to seed. I rather wanted to seed with Eleanor at the next turn, and also I'm one of the 2 weakest right now. It won't really change, but I just thought I don't want to push here. I want to go for Eleanor. It might be the last chance that I have, and of course I want to get a permanent happy face of Homer, and I think Homer definitely has done some very fine work here. I will build 1 more knight, meaning I got 3 resources out of him, and he will be a permanent happy face right now, so I think Homer was very fine this game. And now Eleanor can take over. I can use the resource of Homer 1 last time. That leaves me with enough resources to go for this upgrade to my lab. I used the development of civil life to develop the alchemy. And then I can increase my population. I take the iron and also the reserves. I don't have enough science to go for the iron at the next turn. But I can go maybe for one more lab upgrade, and then I have those rich lands in hand, meaning that I have the chance of going for some iron upgrades very quickly. Maybe there's an early coal, then I could of course also go for coal, but I have the iron in hand now and I have the option to go for this. There's also bread and circuses. I thought about going for the bread and circuses instead of the reserves to disappear. In the end I might need some happy face at some point, but with having the happy face of Homea, I just thought I rather want to wait for an H2 happy face solution. But it definitely could be an idea to grab the bread and circuses instead of the reserves, but the reserves could also be quite nice just to get some additional resources or food depending on what I need more. Then I draw the wealthy territory. Airren takes the bread and circuses and increases population, builds one. That could mean that there is a rebellion coming. I mean, he sees the 3 events. He makes sure that he can fix his happy faces right now. And again, Boudica is giving him 2 additional resources. So, yeah, I think this Boudica has been amazing for him this game. Without Boudica, he never would have been able to build the Universitas and 2 lab upgrades without neglecting his military, but he got 6 resources for the military in the last 3 turns thanks to Boudica. So Boudica basically built all of those swordsmen almost on her own. So Boudica definitely has a lot of potential in 4-player games, because if you often have to build military anyway, and then the 2 additional resources can be very, very helpful, and at the beginning of the game you can get some flexibility out of her. Also interestingly, Airren doesn't go for the iron. Instead he goes for the bread and circuses, making sure that he can fix his happy faces and also increases population and goes for those upgrades to warriors now. And with his last military action, he is revealing the heavy cavalry tactic, meaning that he is probably waiting for Genghis Khan to come. And then at the moment he would even take the strength lead. Wawrzyniec, interestingly, doesn't go for a revolution. I think that could have been quite a strong option for him. Instead, he rather wants to go for the monarchy peacefully and then grabs the breakthrough in the irrigation. I mean, now he of course gets 2 signs from the breakthrough, so with doing the revolution he would save 6 signs. Now he gets at least 2 signs back immediately, and he gets the irrigation. If he does the revolution, there's at least still a shot that he gets the second copy of irrigation, and now he is just very, very low in signs, and I think that can be very problematic with the Machu Picchu. It might take quite a long time until he can actually go for iron. So I'm not really sure if this is better than doing the revolution, but at least he makes sure that he has the irrigation now and that he can get the full power out of Machu Picchu. And then he also will build one more knight, making it that he is the strongest again. Genghisip seeds, and there's the vast territory on top, so we can already see where he wanted to have this colonization bonus. And maybe my bid is a little bit too greedily here, because I'm not really willing to bid that much. I would have to send my whole phalanx army away, but I wanted to make Genghisip pay, but probably would have been safer to just bid 6, because I just was 100% certain that Genghisip, with having Barbarossa, will at least bid an army, and that would be 6 for him with the colonization bonus. But I thought he might even bid more units, because with Barbarossa you can just rebuild so cheaply, and it's just no. So I think if I were in his position, I definitely would bid a knight, a warrior, and maybe even both armies. Maybe that might be too much, but a 3rd unit I think is definitely could definitely be considered, and he could also have a colonization card. So I just thought I can maybe even bid 7, but it's probably too risky, and I should just have bid 6. But I don't get punished for it, and Genghisip has to bid pay more, and he has to send 1 colonization card in addition to his army. And now I can use Barbarossa very nicely to rebuild. That's just so strong. He can get 3 activations out of him this turn. Has a very nice yellow bank now. And then he takes the urban growth for 2 civil actions, the frugality, the swordsman, and the iron. Doesn't go for the alchemy. I think that could have been an idea, because at the next turn he has not enough science for iron, but enough for alchemy. And he has this urban growth. So I think it could have been an idea to go for the alchemy instead of the iron, but of course having the iron could also be not bad. Now after his turn the first age will end. I'm not the weakest. There could be some bad events, for example a rebellion, but even if there is a rebellion, I still have enough civil actions left to grab the constitutional monarchy, and that was what I want to do this turn. I see the knowledge of the ancients. I mean, I will get some science production now, so it could maybe be helpful for the others, more helpful, but for Airren, with having only universitas and with having very strong science production anyway, it is probably, it's definitely stronger for me than for him, I think. For Wawrzyniec it could be strong, but at least both of those players already have a government form, while I still need a government form. Maybe the additional science will allow me to go for a government form earlier. I mean, it's actually not really the case, because I will take the Conmon this turn, and my plan was to do a revolution, so maybe I could also just see the wealthy territory, but Genghisip has Barbarossa. It will take some time until it will be revealed, so who knows if he will have still Barbarossa at this point, but the knowledge of the ancients I just felt like this is maybe less swingy than a potential wealthy territory that definitely can help out quite a lot, as we have seen in my last game that I covered on this channel. And then there is the border conflict revealed. I was very happy about this, because Airren might go for Genghis Khan at this next turn, or actually maybe not, because I will let him stay on 3 civil actions, but he might get stronger with building another swordsman, and then I might have get hit by this event. Like this, I'm not part of it, and I was quite happy about this. And then, as I said, this turn I definitely want to go for the constitutional monarchy. At the next turn I can do a revolution. It could be very strong, and then I have my government form already, and I have the alchemies going, I have the Airren that I can potentially go for, so I thought I might end up having quite a nice position. And also I just want to take it away from Airren, who has lots of science and would be able to go for it peacefully at the turn after his next turn. Then I can go for one upgrade to my labs, getting even more science production, so that I also produce an additional science when I will do the revolution at the next turn. With my last civil action I can only do one thing, and that is playing the reserves for either food or resources. But the thing is, if I do this, then I can only do the revolution at the next turn with corruption, so I actually might end up playing this for a value of 0. And I didn't really want to do this, so I instead made a decision to just float my last civil action. I keep the colonization cards, and I will draw the immigration and a war over technology. Airren will grab the code of laws. He wants to invest his science. Somehow has now 5 civil actions. The first government form was taken away, so he maybe doesn't want to wait for a government form to get one more civil action. And of course he has quite a lot of science to invest, so it should also, after investing into code of laws, be no problem for him to get a government form going. He builds a swordsman, meaning now I'm the weakest. Wawrzyniec seeds. There's no strength event, which I'm very happy about, and the scientific breakthrough is revealed. That gives Airren a lot of science, but I also get quite a lot of science out of it, and it actually allows me to even go for the common peacefully at my next turn, so that definitely opens up some new options. But a revolution might still be very strong, because if I invest into it peacefully, then I am again relatively low in science, so I might still prefer revolution, but it definitely opens up options. Wawrzyniec this turn builds 2 stages of the Machu Picchu, takes the engineering genius, builds one farm, interestingly. I mean, that's interesting, but it also of course makes sense, because he is stuck at 3 food. Now that he builds this farm, he will be able to increase his population at the next turn, and I mean, he still has Jan Žižka, so if at the next turn with the engineering genius he could potentially just finish the Machu Picchu, and he would have still enough resource left to go for another knight, and with having this farm, that actually will mean having another army, so he can go for even more strength, for even more pressure. So I think that farm is definitely a very interesting play, but on the long run he maybe doesn't really need 3 farms with also having Machu Picchu in the irrigation, but he can maybe then delete this farm at some point. And maybe he doesn't even need to delete it and will just have a very strong food production. And then he also takes the drama. There's Bach in the game, so with having lots of food production from the Machu Picchu, definitely could be an idea to go for Bach. Genghisip uses the frugality to increase his population, and then uses Barbarossa to build another warrior, going up to 15 strength, which makes him the strongest again. He also will build one more arena with using the bread and circuses, and then he will develop the code of laws, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to go, because now he is back at 2 science, or at 0 science, and then at 2 science at his next turn, meaning it will take a long time until he can invest in any other technologies, and I'm not sure if getting the 6th civil action is really worth it to go that low on science, but maybe it is an indicator that there could be Dark Ages in the deck, but even then it could maybe be an idea to just go for the Airren instead. But I mean, yeah, maybe he can do some other stuff, but when he doesn't develop a technology the next gen, it might also be difficult for him to get out of corruption, so I'm not sure if it is the correct move to go for the Code of Laws, but of course it's also not bad. And then he will get the breakthrough to get some additional science, but no, he only will get the science after he developed the technology, so it won't really help him for the next turn. This turn I make a decision which is maybe a mistake, because I make the decision to seed here, and seeding is maybe too dangerous here. But it is a very difficult decision, because getting the additional draws of Eleanor can just be very helpful. Some strength events would maybe not be that bad, but there are some potentially bad events. And maybe the worst event would be the uncertain borders, because if I lose this yellow token in the bank, then I will have an uprising issue. So that could be very bad, and maybe because of that alone it should not be worth it to seed. And then for my turn I would still prefer revolution. But there are two events that could potentially destroy my revolution, and those events are the rebellion and the call to arms. So there could be some events that could be annoying, but I made a decision that I wanted to get the draws of Eleanor, which also will translate into some additional culture. Of course, the culture is not the main reason for that, but additional draws could be very important. And so I made a decision to seed. If I would not have 12 science, then I think I would skip seeding, because then not doing the revolution would be quite bad, because I actually need to get a Conmon going in order to be able to defend myself against Genghisip. However, now if the revolution should fail, if there is rebellion or call to arms, I still have the option to go for the Conmon peacefully, so because of that I thought I can maybe risk the emigration. Uncertain borders would be very bad, but they will stay weakest for now anyway. Of course, it would be worse if it is already opened right now, but then if it is opened after my turn, I will have the problems at the next turn. And so I made a decision to seed, but it is maybe a mistake, because while I can go for Conmon peacefully, it is actually quite awkward, as we will see, because the event that is revealed is sadly the call to arms, so I will lose 2 civil actions and I won't be able to do the revolution. But there are also good news, because I have now the conquistadors, and maybe even more importantly the mobile artillery tactic. So I lose the ability to do the revolution, but I actually get 2 potentially strong tactics, especially the mobile artillery could be very nice. So I am actually not sure if it is a bad event for me now or a good event. Probably not good, because we will see that it is actually quite an awkward turn for me now. Or maybe not awkward, I mean, at least I will be able to get a Conmon going, that's definitely something. Yeah. And no, but I have an issue now, and that is that I am at the next turn only at 4 science production. And for example, one turn that I could maybe do, and that would maybe the first turn that I considered here, is just to take the frugality and the patriotism, take 2 yellow cards. But then I have 6 cards in hand, I have only a space for 1 more card. I can't develop the Airren, meaning I can't really use the rich lands, I can't use the frugality, the patriotism I can maybe play, but it's questionable if I can use the resources then. So I can maybe only use the reserves to make space in my hand, and I can't really spend my civil action very nicely to do anything with my civilization. So yeah, that's definitely would be awkward, and I think because of that, just going for the 2 yellow cards could cause issues. It probably would also mean that I have corruption at the next turn, and yeah, it just would be a bit awkward. One thing that I can maybe hope for is that I get a Statue of Liberty at the next turn if I take those 2 yellow cards, and then I could maybe take it, play the reserves for resources, and build a first step for 7 resources, but then I would invest a lot of resources into the statue before actually getting my resource production going. With the rich lands I could still maybe get it going relatively quickly, so that could be maybe one way how I can play my turn at the next turn, but it's also not for certain that the Statue of Liberty will be available. So I thought about maybe even just grabbing the Statue of Liberty this turn, just making sure that I can get out of corruption, that I have something to do with my civil actions at the next turn, and then I also don't have that many cards in hand, but it also just didn't feel too great to invest that many resources into the statue. Could also maybe consider the Eiffel Tower, which is available for cheaper, and at least the Happy Face might also be somewhat useful, but yeah, spending 3 resources in that might actually not be enough to get out of corruption. So, or actually I think it will be enough just, but then I can't play the reserves really, which is maybe not that big of a deal, but it just wasn't that easy to find a nice solution for this turn, and what I actually really wanted to do is being able to get this Airren going already the next turn. There's no knowledge of the ancients to the next deck, maybe I'm lucky and this will be revealed already. I have also the Scientific Cooperation Pact, but it will maybe be questionable whether this will be accepted, and then I also have to keep it in hand. There are some other cards that I maybe rather want to keep in hand, but it could maybe be an idea, just hoping that this will be accepted. But if the other players see that it makes a very big difference for my turn, then I probably won't accept it, and so it's maybe also not nice to plan on for this. And so I made the decision to go for a little bit of a greedy play, but it just might enable a very much stronger turn for my next turn. And I actually, after taking the patriotism, I disbanded this warrior. Now I'm only at 5 strength, but I have this conquistadors tactic that I can now use outdated, so I basically get the 3 strength from the phalanx back. I have only 1 strength less, I will miss out on 1 draw, but I have a nice tactic already. And and that allows me to put this worker into my lab, meaning that I will have 5 science available the next turn. I will have 3 resources, or even 5, because with my last civil action I will play the reserves this turn for 2 resources. With having the 2 rich lands, that means that I can just go for 3 upgrades to Airren at the next turn, or if I don't want to go for 3 upgrades to Airren, I can also go for 2 upgrades to Airren and for 1 more upgrade, for 1 more lab upgrade, meaning that after I develop the Airren at the next turn, I will have 6 signs available in 2 turns, meaning that I threaten to go for either cannons or rifleman. So that definitely could enable a very strong turn at the next turn, but of course it is also very greedy. With 8 strength and with the defense cards that I have in hand, I will be able to defend myself against Genghisip. At least I've drawn already 1 war and the other players had not that many H2 draws yet, so hopefully there won't be a war. But the thing is also, if I don't do this, I'm not that much nicer prepared for war. I mean, I have only 1 strength less, and I wouldn't be able to go for any military tech anyway, so if there's a war, I would be in big danger anyway, so it's not like now I'm in big danger and with the other play I would be completely safe. But of course I'm more in danger, I have 1 strength less that could at some point make a difference for an aggression, but I just thought it might be worth it just to be able to get this Airren going. And now of course you can see that just doing a revolution would just be a lot nicer and would allow me to go for the Airren at the next turn without having that much trouble. And yeah, of course I thought about if I maybe can just go for Airren this turn, not going for Conmon, but as I said, I need additional military actions to defend myself. And one option that I also considered, only very shortly, but it could maybe be even an idea, instead of deleting this warrior, I could also grab Shakespeare and replace Eleanor, and with the happy face of Shakespeare I could then build a lab without having to delete a warrior. But then I probably only would use Shakespeare for the happy face for many turns, and that just didn't feel too nice. So at the end I went for this, which is greedy, but I was just hoping that I will survive the next 1 or 2 turns, and then I could actually transition into quite a nice position. Maybe it could have been also an idea to just grab this irrigation, and then I could develop it with 4 science. But yeah, maybe I considered this option as much as I should have, so yeah, that maybe could also be an idea. But then I maybe have irrigations and Airrens going, which is maybe not that nice, but it could be an idea. But yeah, maybe I should have considered this option more. But if I will survive this, then I think this going for Airren definitely has the bigger potential. But maybe it could be an idea, just take the irrigation in hand to have something to do, and then I can maybe offer the scientific cooperation in order to have a chance at going for the Airren. So that's something I didn't consider too much during the game, and maybe I should have considered it more. But the food upgrades wouldn't do that much, because it would take some time to increase my population. If I can increase my population, and the next worker will actually be unhappy, so the food upgrades wouldn't really do a lot. So I think going for the Airren is definitely stronger, but it's definitely also greedy deleting this warrior. Airren offers the acceptance of supremacy, but I mean it could even be an idea to accept it because he will go for Genghis Khan or will be at 14 strength, but losing 1 resource production, giving him 1. I just didn't want to do this. I just was hoping that I will be able to survive, and if he goes, if I accept this pact, then there's still the danger of the other players. And Airren this turn will go for Genghis Khan, is now the second strongest, and will also grab the cavalryman. Wawrzyniec finishes the Machu Picchu, will increase his population, goes for 1 more knight, is now at 17 strength, and it definitely could get dangerous. He will take the scientific method and will develop the Airren. Maybe Newton will be an option for him at the next turn. I mean, he can't go for scientific methods immediately, but at some point he will, and then he has a strong resource, food, and science production with Machu Picchu and Newton. Genghisip doesn't go for an aggression, that's definitely nice, meaning that I can still keep my colonization cards in hand, so far I have survived my greedy play. The raiders are revealed, that's maybe not the worst event, but it's definitely a bit annoying, because I have to lose 1 resource and 1 food now, meaning I will lose the option to go for 1 upgrade, and then Genghisip will go for the selective breeding, the frugality, and the reserves. Will have corruption, so yeah, that is 1 consequence of investing into the Code of Laws at the last turn, but at least he has some civil actions to just take some stuff. This turn I see that again, I'm again the weakest, but I just wanted to have this Ravages of Time in the deck. With having 7 civil actions, I hopefully will have enough to survive losing the pyramids. It could still be nice, definitely better to still have 7 civil actions than 6, but Airren will lose the Universitas, Wawrzyniec either Machu Picchu or Hanging Gardens, and Genghisip the Colosseum, so I think it definitely will hurt the other players quite a bit, and I wanted to have it in the next deck already. It also means that I can get 1 activation of Eleanor before I will switch to Newton this turn. The reds are revealed. It's actually a little bit annoying because now I actually have to lose 2 resources from the raiders, so losing the reds basically not cost me 1 food but 1 resource in this situation, meaning I have only 3 resources left. I will go for Newton this turn because Newton will allow me to go for the Airren and still have enough science to go for military technology the next turn, which could be very important if there, for example, are cannons available so that I can switch into the mobile artillery and hopefully be safe, but also riflemen, of course, could be very nice. So I go for Newton here this turn. I can use him immediately to save 1 civil action when I develop the Airren. Of course there's also the coal in the row, but I just thought waiting to go for the coal is not worth it. As I said, I might have to go for military attack at the next turn. So if I have to do this, then I still can't go for the coal at the next turn, and it might just be delayed too much. I still thought about taking it, but let's talk about this at the end of my turn. I will go for 2 upgrades, so I will be at 5 resource production now. I take the urban growth, and I will go for the statue. I thought about taking 1 of the other cards, but I might have to go for military tech. I mean, architecture maybe could be a nice tech, but I thought a statue could be a nice one to have at some point. It probably will take some time until I can finish it, but just getting the additional yellow tokens and some cultural production at some point could be very nice. Nice way to invest my resources, and I just didn't have that much else to do. And then I thought about just taking the coal with my last civil action, because Airren could just go for coal, but the thing is, he also, now that he got hit by the reds, has to lose 2 resources from the raiders, so he can't go for the coal immediately at the next turn, and with that I didn't feel that it is necessary to take this option away from him, because there's still a second copy, and that could just be available for him at the next turn anyway, so instead I just went for the opera. That allows me to still have some options for my culture production, maybe go for Chaplin in H3, maybe it opens up the Hollywood and just gives me the possibility to produce some science. This turn again, it might be dangerous. I can defend against Genghisip and Airren, but I can't defend against Wawrzyniec. I definitely can have hopes to maybe draw an additional defense card, but of course I don't know it. And of course there could even be multiple aggressions. At the next turn I have 6 science, maybe there will be a cannon, and then I could transition into mobile artillery, hopefully making me safe. So now it will be very interesting. If I can survive 1 more round without getting hit by anything bad, then I actually might have a very strong position with 6 science production now. I have my resource production up, and that is just, Genghisip, for example, hasn't upgraded anything yet. Wawrzyniec, I mean, has the Machu Picchu, he will definitely improve his situation, but I take Newton, so you won't be able to get him, and it definitely will take some time until we'll have upgraded everything. And Airren probably has maybe the strongest position here just because he has that much science available. But if I can survive it, then I should have a nice position, but I could also get hit by potentially even multiple aggressions, and then, but I mean that would be unlikely, then even basically all of the players would have to go for an aggression, because I can defend against Genghisip, so, yeah. But it could happen, and it definitely could be quite dangerous. I keep both of the tactics in hand so that I have nice tactic for riflemen and for cannons. I will draw one more colonization card, so that could be very, very important. And I also draw the Hussars tactic, which could also be an option, but a second copy of Cavalryman might be discarded before my next turn. Actually, will be discarded for certain before my next turn. Sadly, as you can see, Airren already goes for an aggression, and I just have to defend against this blunder. It would help him a lot, and it would hurt me a lot, so I have to defend this, but it means that I already have to use some of my cards. I still have enough to defend against Genghisip, but if I defend against him, then I actually have to discard my tactics, and that could be very, very costly. At least I have the Conquistador's tactic revealed, but it would be very costly, and now I can't defend against Wawrzyniec again, so it could be get very dangerous here. Airren will go for the common, so with that he won't miss out on any draws with going for this aggression. He will grab the architecture, the coal, and then he will just develop the coal. Is maybe afraid of the Dark Ages, and maybe he also can't really do a lot else with this turn. He could have maybe taken the opera, but yeah, it's maybe not something that he wants to go for. And as you can see, sadly, I get hit by an aggression here, and that is also quite an annoying one. I get infiltrated, and I will lose Newton, so that is definitely quite bad, meaning that I will play without a leader for quite a while. Newton definitely could have given me quite a lot of value. I mean, at least it doesn't take me any resources or science away, meaning I maybe have a shot that I have 3 copies of cannons in the row to go for a cannon still at the next turn, maybe transitioning into mobile artillery, hopefully stabilizing my position, but it's definitely very bad, and yeah, so I get now punished for my greedy play. Then Wawrzyniec goes for an upgrade to Airren, develops the irrigation, meaning that he still can't go for scientific method at the next turn, but maybe at some point. Of course, he wants to get this irrigation going at some point. It's now 6 resource production, and he will go for Bach. Has the dramas in hand, already has a bit of a culture lead when we take a look at the overview, and can maybe make this even bigger if he goes for Bach. And as you can see, there's another infiltrate, so I get double infiltrated. I don't think that happened ever to me before, getting hit by 2 infiltrates in 1 round. But of course, you remember, I could actually defend against Genghisip still, but now I only lose the statue, and it would take some time until I can invest into this anyway. Maybe I don't find the time and resources anyway to invest into this, and so I rather wanted to keep the mobile artillery tactic in hand and to keep the statue, and so I made a decision to not defend against this aggression. Genghisip at least only gets 6 culture out of it, not any resources, so that's maybe not too bad. It would have been a tricky decision if I still would have had Newton. Maybe Wawrzyniec wouldn't have gone for an aggression, and now Genghisip would have gone for the infiltrate. Then it would be a tough decision deciding if I want to keep Newton or the mobile artillery tactic, but I think now I clearly want to lose the statue. Yeah, so that definitely was not great for me, but it could have maybe even been worse. So maybe that still allows me to stabilize my position. But losing Newton, of course, is quite bad. Genghisip will play the reserves for food now. That allows him to go for more Barbarossa activation. After this, he will go for Nobel, gets a strong replacement. Barbarossa definitely has done a lot of work for him. And then he will go for the Swordsman, and he will destroy 1 farm. It would take quite a while until we get another population anyway. Instead, he wants to put this worker into Swordsman. It's now at 24 strength, so he really wants to go for a lot of pressure. Maybe he has another war, another aggression or something in hand. And that definitely could mean that there is quite a lot of, that I'm in quite a bit of danger. And then he also takes the copy of cannon. This turn I definitely want to go for the cannons, and I definitely want to transition into the mobile artillery. I can go for 1 cannon, and then sadly, even with the patriotism, I'm missing 1 resource to go for 2 cannons. Then I maybe could even be completely safe from an aggression. But sadly, I'm missing 1 resource for this, and I can only go for 1 cannon now. And the big question was, what should I delete for it? I could delete a lab, could delete a mine, or I could delete a warrior. And I thought about it. and I thought that I want to keep those economical workers or buildings as long as possible, and so I made a decision to play the patriotism and disband the warrior. I probably would do this anyway if I go for the second for the second cannon. And now that I reveal the mobile artillery tactic, I'm at 12 strength, I can defend against Airren, I can defend against Wawrzyniec, and I can't defend against Genghisip anyway, so the one additional strength from the warrior wouldn't change anything. Maybe I could draw one more card, but then I would miss out on one civil action, and having 4 civil actions is quite useful actually, so I could have maybe not played the patriotism, but then I again would have missed out on one draw like I do now. So, no, I think deleting the warrior is fine here. I'm at 12 strength now, so at least I'm only in danger of an aggression from Genghisip, but it is of course still somewhat dangerous. And the question was, what should I do with my last civil actions? I thought about a strategy. I could maybe go for it at some point, so it could be helpful for me, and it also could be very, very dangerous if Genghisip gets the strategy. Then he could really go for lots of strength, has even more military actions to do some stuff. But I thought that the other players have to take it away. Maybe not Airren, because he has the warfare, but Wawrzyniec, he will lose Jan Žižka at some point. He has Bach in hand, and maybe just wants to go for some peaceful culture. And if he gives strategy to Genghisip, he could also be in very big danger. So I thought that the strategy hopefully will be denied anyway. And it would take some time until I can use it for myself. I also want to still go for food production at some point. So I thought the strategy is not the ideal pick here. And I think the best pick here is to go first of all for the organized religion. Just making sure that I get the happy face solution. I get it now for one civil action. And then I think the wave of nationalism is a very important card here that has 2 purposes. First of all, if Genghisip indeed will go for an aggression and maybe he has a blunder, which I thought is maybe not that likely, because then he maybe would have gone for the blunder already at the last turn when he went for the aggression, which would have been better for him than the infiltrate, but maybe the infiltrate was only an aggression to get the cards out of my hand, because I could have actually defended, so maybe he thought I can defend, and then I maybe wanted to keep the better aggression for now when he goes for that much strength, so that definitely could be, so there could be a blunder. But now with the wave, I have enough resource to go for one more cannon, even if I get hit by a blunder. So that is one important thing of this wave. And then it hopefully also makes me safe from a war, because Genghisip of course could also go for a war. But now with the wave of nationalism, I have enough resource to go for a cannon, and then even for another cannon and knight. That would of course be very costly, because I have to delete a lot of stuff, but I could potentially go for this, so I threaten this, and with that I should be able to win a war, and with that I hopefully won't be the target of a war if Genghisip goes for one. So I think because of that I have to go for the wave here, and I'm still in danger of an aggression, but hopefully not of a war because of this wave that I have in hand now. And then I will draw two more cards. Draw another tactic, the fortifications and the annex. Airren seeds and the knowledge of the ancients is revealed, so some additional science for everyone. And it actually is probably the most helpful for Wawrzyniec now, because it even allows him to maybe go for scientific methods already at the next turn. Or maybe for Rifleman to defend himself. Airren takes the cannons, takes the rich land, takes the urban growth, so just takes a bunch of cards, takes Maria, elects Maria, so he goes very, very low in strength now, which is maybe even a little bit annoying for me, because I will lose 2 resources from the wave if I want to use it at the next turn. But Airren will get additional resources out of Maria at the next turn. He can go for one upgrade, has 7 resources, will develop the cavalryman with his last civil action, and thanks to Maria he will have 10 resources at the next turn. He will copy the phalanx tactic now, and he then has enough resource to potentially build 2 cavalrymen, going for fine amount of strength at the next turn. But of course also it could be quite costly to build those cavalrymen, because for every cavalryman that he wants to build he has to delete something, so that of course could be quite costly. And actually this decision to develop the cavalryman might have some very bad consequences for him, but we will talk about this at the beginning of Genghisip's turn. Also, Airren doesn't take the strategy, so it will now be interesting to see if Wawrzyniec will take it. Wawrzyniec seeds in the inhabited territory is revealed, and I didn't want to bid for this. I just wanted to definitely keep my cards, and so I just passed on this one, and Genghisip wins it, and he wins it for one warrior. And now it could actually be a little bit annoying, because I said the warrior doesn't make a difference and that I will be able to defend against an aggression, but now it actually does, because with one more strength I would be able to defend against an aggression, but now I'm still not, so that could be quite bad now, having disbanded the warrior, but of course I think that was not that easily foreseeable. Wawrzyniec copies the conquistador's tactic using the military actions of Jan Žižka, goes for Bach, and develops drama with Bach. The next turn he might there might already be h3, so he might lose it. He will go for the strategy, also will go for Rifleman, develops it, and because of the strength push of Genghisip, he kinda has to increase his strength, goes up to 16 strength now, but it means that he delays the scientific method by quite a lot, so the strength push of Genghisip definitely prevents the other players from doing something nice, no, because going for science upgrades could have been very strong, I think, for Wawrzyniec. But I think he definitely has to be very careful here. And as you can see, Genghisip goes for a war over territory against Airren. It's his last stage, 2 cards, so after this he only has this one card left. He will go for another swordsman, goes for the navigation. It is a 27 strength now, takes the breakthrough, the reserves, and that's his turn. He has to float the last civil action, but gets some value out of his gets some valuable yellow cards. And as I said, at Airren's turn, developing the cavalryman could, has some consequences for him, because after the game, Airren asked Genghisip if he also would have gone for the war if Airren would have developed the cannons just to threaten the defensive army, because Genghisip definitely has not the defensive army in hand now. And Genghisip said that he actually very likely wouldn't have gone for the war then, and he took developing the cavalryman as an indicator that Airren probably doesn't have the defensive army. So in this position, maybe it could have been better to bluff the defensive army going for the cannons in order to avoid the war. I definitely wouldn't call it a mistake, because Genghisip has only this one H2 card. I mean, he had more H2 cards in hand at Airren's turn because the colony wasn't revealed yet, but he didn't have that many draws, so it could be that he doesn't have a war at all. But it is not a mistake, definitely not a mistake, but it has a blade that has consequences for Airren now, because now he gets hit by the war, and otherwise he might not have gotten hit by the war, but of course it's a difficult decision. Now he can use the phalanx tactic at least with developing the cannon. Maybe he gets still hit by the war. No, I mean, he still can develop the cannons, so it's not, he could still threaten the defensive army, but if he would have the defensive army already in hand at his turn, then he would have developed the cannons. So Genghisip took this as an indicator that he didn't have it in hand at his turn. He could have maybe drawn it now, but Genghisip was willing to take that risk and goes for the war now against Airren. And I think it was very important that I have this wave now in hand, threatening potentially 3 armies, so that I am not a target of this war. Genghisip draws one more card, but it should be very unlikely that he has another war in hand, so maybe I don't have to be as carefully now, which will make a difference for my turn. First of all, this turn I have to delete something else. I could also delete the mine. The science production, of course, could also be quite useful, but playing the H3 and 4 resource production, I thought, could just be quite bad, especially when I will lose the pyramids to the Ravages of Time that will be coming relatively soon. So I rather destroy the lab in order to play the wave, sadly only for 4 resources, because Airren went down very low on strength, so that's a bit annoying, but at least it's still 4 resources and I didn't want to wait using it, because now I'm at quite nice amount of strength. And with having the second copy of cannon, I am finally in a stabilized position. I am not in danger of any aggression, and hopefully also not in danger of a war. And as I said, Airren and Wawrzyniec don't really threaten any wars. Genghisip has only drawn 1 card now. I had 1 war in hand, so there are only 2 wars left. And with that, I thought that I have to not be overly careful about a war, and I was willing to go selective breeding and to go for 2 upgrades immediately, investing all of my resources, meaning that I don't have enough resources to go for another army, but there will also be maybe some H2 events, so Genghisip, even if he has drawn a war, it would be a little bit risky to go against me, but yeah, it should be unlikely that he has drawn one. And with going for 2 upgrades, it means that I can increase my population at the next turn, and with my last civil action I took the frugality, meaning that I can increase my population at the next turn. I will lose 2 Euro tokens before my next turn, meaning that with when I increase my population, I go into the next area of my yellow bank, and thanks to the frugality, I will be able to increase my population at the next turn and also then at the following turn. So I think that's nice frugality for me. And I mean, I have not that bad of a position right now. I have upgraded everything. I have some additional science production, fine resource production, nice food production. I will be able to go for a happy face solution, hopefully before the immigration will be revealed, but even if it is revealed, at least I will be able to increase my population. I have a free population, so it wouldn't be the end of the world. And yeah, on the others, Genghisip has Nobel for some additional science production, but he didn't upgrade to anything else yet. He will lose the Airren, meaning that he will go into H3 with only being on bronze mines. Airren could have potentially have a very nice position, but getting hit by this war might be very bad for him because he has to disband some stuff in order to defend, and if he doesn't do this, he will lose lots of yellows. And Wawrzyniec, I mean, he is the culture lead, he has potential to go for even more culture production, has fine food and resource production, and maybe at some point can go for scientific method, but he's very low in science, so I actually think I don't have a bad position here. Probably not the best, but maybe also not the worst, so I think there is still everything possible for me here. And yeah, so I was very happy that I now stabilized my position. Being without H2 leader is still very bad, but I still think I have a fine position right now. I draw the popularization of science, also the promise of military protection pact. Airren seeds the last H1 event on top the Dark Ages. I only lose 1 science, so it's not too bad for me. Airren loses 3 science, Genghisip 2, Wawrzyniec no science. Airren grabs the efficient upgrade for 3 civil actions, grabs the rifleman, so he could potentially also just get some strength with upgrading to the rifleman. I thought about taking the rifleman away, but it is unlikely that I will need those. And I rather wanted to have the frugality because, as I said, it will be a nice frugality for me. And then Airren is willing to destroy both of his mines. He will develop the cannon, so maybe he's drawn the defensive army now, but he hasn't. Instead, he has maybe drawn the Napoleonic army. I think if he had this before, he also would have gone for cannons to threaten the defensive army, I think. And so he goes for the Napoleonic army now. Is at least at 23 strength, meaning that he will only lose 1 yellow token at least, but he had to destroy both mines. He's now also at least a 3 resource production still, but of course that's not ideal, and so I think that war hits him quite a lot here. Then H3 will start. Wawrzyniec increases his population, upgrades 1 farm, has now some additional food production, upgrades even another farm, destroys 1 mine, upgrades his last mine, but will stay at 6 resource production for now, but he needs another worker to put into the rifleman, and with having those cheap dramas, maybe he rather wants to keep this additional farm than the additional mine. It's now at 24 strength, so all of the other players should now not be in any danger of an aggression. So Genghisip probably can't go for any more aggressions or wars now. He will steal 1 yellow token from Airren, and the H2 card that he's drawn is the International Trade Agreement, meaning that he has no card left in hand now, and yeah, he will get additional resource production, Airren additional food production. And then Genghisip will go for additional food production. Additional resource production is definitely quite nice for him with being stuck on bronze mines now. He will go for an upgrade, and then he grabs the engineering genius and the architecture. No, which I think is fine. Engineering genius maybe still allows him to go for wonder even though he's on bronze mines, and architecture also might save him some resources. Alternatively, he could have maybe taken the rough idea, but it's only the one of H2, so I think that's also a very fine pick. And then he goes for 1 more upgrade using the 1 free military action that he has. This turn I could potentially see the popularization of science. There is the immigration, but I still would only lose 1 population, and maybe that's not even that bad, but it's of course also not great. The reason why I considered seeding is that I wanted to see the Ravages of Time revealed very soon. For Wawrzyniec, it just would be very bad. Losing Machu Picchu or the Hanging Gardens both is definitely something that he doesn't want to happen. And Airren would lose the Universitas, getting down in science production immediately. So maybe not that bad for him as for Wawrzyniec, but because of that I thought about seeding. But at the end I used my politics action differently, and I actually offered a promise of military protection to Genghisip. I thought about if this is really worth it for me. I get the culture production, Genghisip the strength, and because he has no culture production anyway, he's basically at -1 culture production now, so he doesn't lose any culture production because of the pact. So why did I go for this? I just thought Genghisip, with being on bronze mines, with not having any cultural lead and stuff, has maybe not the best position here. It's definitely not like he has the worst position. He's definitely can do some stuff. He has fine science production, and maybe he will be able to set up for something nice. But with having a low culture, I just thought that he maybe has the worst position, or maybe at least not the best position out of the players. So if he should get some additional value out of the strength with a war or an aggression, then it wouldn't be that bad. However, I thought that for Wawrzyniec and for Airren it could be very annoying now that Genghisip has more strength. It could mean that they have to do some awkward plays to make sure that they can defend against an aggression. Maybe it prevents them from doing some other nice stuff. So I thought it could be nice for me if Genghisip has more strength and I just get one additional culture reduction out of it. And at the end I thought that the whole package of this is maybe nice enough for me that I'm willing to give Genghisip some more strength. If he goes for an aggression against me, the pact will just be cancelled and I will be able to defend against an aggression. So hopefully I will just be able to focus on doing some nice things for my own, while the other players maybe have to be more careful. This turn the big question was, what happy face solution should I go for? I could just go for the organized religion and build one, then I have 5 civil actions left and I thought about maybe just taking the revolutionary idea and then either urban growth or maybe even just the computers, and I was really tempted to go for this computers play. As I said, there is definitely a lot of lab synergy. Steve Jobs, Sid Meier, Bill Gates. I definitely need a new leader, so being able to go for a computer leader could definitely be very nice. But it also would be a little bit greedy. I mean, I have this pact now with Genghisip, but if I go for organized religion now, I spend almost all of my resources. Then if I go for a computer upgrade at the next turn, I will spend all of my resources. Maybe I will get a reserves, but I don't know it. And it means that I might not really be able to threaten another army, which is maybe fine for one turn, but it could be could be a little bit greedy. I mean, I also have the popularization of science in hand, so maybe it would just be best to go for the organized religion, revolutionary idea, and computers. But after I go for computers, I also will only be able to go for one upgrade, meaning that I won't have the most science available and don't have enough to go for any blue techs or for air forces or for stuff like this. I probably also won't be able to do this now. Well, actually, I probably will, because I should be able to do this and to go for to go for something like military theory, air forces in 2 turns. So I thought it might be a little bit too greedy. Maybe I still have a shot at getting those computers at the next turn and can decide then. But the team sports being a little bit cheaper just is a big advantage here. And, well, I don't have the computers in hand to go for computers leaders. At least I have the arenas in order to make Pierre an option. So that's at least something. But the main reason to go for team sports for me here was to save some resources, which I can actually use immediately. And the strength, of course, also could be quite useful. After doing this, I wanted to take the revolutionary idea. Now taking computers doesn't make sense. Without a revolutionary idea, I could take urban growth, but I think the science is quite important for me, and more important probably than the resources. I can increase my population with the frugality. And then I thought about building a knight, because it makes sure that I am stronger than Airren. But I have knowledge about 2 of those events. One of is immigration, the other ravages of time. So there's only one unknown event. And if I build as knights now, I also didn't really know what I want to do with my last civil action, and so instead I just went for my last mine upgrade, so that I get this in. It hopefully will still pay off. I can get one more free population at the next turn. I have this revolutionary idea, and just have this upgrade in now. And it just felt a little bit better to me than just going for the computers, because it might be that I can't go for it because it might be too greedy. But it could also be very strong just having this as an option, so just going for organized religion, taking Revadi and computers could be a strong alternative, but I made the decision to rather go for the team sports here, which is maybe the safer play. I don't leave myself with enough resources to go for another army, but if Genghisip goes for war against me, then the pact will be cancelled, and there could potentially be events that help me. I see the 2 of them, so maybe Genghisip will be careful, and so I was hoping that I won't be at any big danger. And also Genghisip just drew 3 cards, so it was maybe also not that likely that he's already drawn a war. I will draw a war, that could be an option at some point. At the moment it's probably not, but definitely could be at some point. Modern army will probably too difficult to transition into. Airren will disband a swordsman that allows him to build an arena. He has some uprising issues because of the additional yellow token that he lost. Actually, the additional food production that Genghisip offered him is quite nice for him, but maybe Genghisip was afraid that if he offers it to me or Wawrzyniec, we maybe would reject it, because the resource production is also very nice for him, so he maybe just wanted to make sure that this pack gets accepted, because if Airren has famine now, it of course would cause even more problems for him. Or maybe even not, because he actually can go for selective breeding this turn, he will do this. He doesn't go for Mandela, and takes the urban growth, takes the selective breeding, goes for 2 upgrades, so he wouldn't be able to prevent famine anyway. But maybe depending on what options would be available for him, it could of course been quite nice to not be forced to go for food production immediately, but of course with Maria he wants to get this food production going as quickly as possible. He won't use the resources this turn, but getting the food production going is very important, and then deleting another swordsman and putting it into something, he didn't have enough resources left for that, so maybe he can then use again the resource of Maria the next turn, but sadly he's missing 1 food to increase his population, so that might not be that easy, but maybe he can then delete a swordsman and rebuild as another unit then at the next turn. Wawrzyniec opens the immigration. He's the only one with an unhappy population, so he will lose that one. He uses Bach to go for an upgrade from labs to dramas, gets up to 6 culture production now, also doesn't go for Mandela. I definitely was paying attention to this, because it could be an option for me at my turn. Then he goes for the communism. Could maybe an idea to go for a revolution to this at some point, but at the moment it would still cause him too much happy face issues. But he also gets the bro sports, builds 1 knight to get a bit more strength. Maybe he needs this to make sure that he can defend against an aggression. Genghisip opens the Ravages of Time, was really hoping that it maybe is revealed on Wawrzyniec's turn, but at least the immigration was revealed, which also damaged his position, and now the Ravages is revealed. I will lose the Pyramids, Genghisip the Colosseum, Airren the Universitas, and Wawrzyniec has a difficult decision to make between losing Machu Picchu or the Hanging Gardens. But he has the bro spots now in hand, so maybe it's not the biggest deal for him, but he has not enough science to go for it immediately, so it would still be very annoying to lose the Hanging Gardens. Genghisip goes for the 2nd upgrade to his farms now, takes the computers, so sadly I won't have this as an option available. Also takes the military theory, develops the architecture, so that means that he can't go for computers at the next turn, but he also kinda has to make space in his hand, and going for computer upgrades without architecture is maybe too costly. The last event on top is actually played by Genghisip, and I thought that it might be the Cold War, because that would then make a lot of sense, that he develops the architecture and then he could still go for computers at the next turn. I was afraid of it being the Cold War, because that also would mean that Wawrzyniec has enough science to go for pro sports at the next turn, making it that losing the Hanging Gardens isn't that big of an issue for him. However, I still made the decision to cede, because first of all I don't know whether it is the Cold War, second of all I won't get stronger anyway, and so I just wanted to push the popularization of science. Airren will lose the Universitas, Genghisip is at 4 science, he can't really go for computers the next turn at least, and unless there is indeed the Cold War on top, and then Wawrzyniec has just very low science production, so it hopefully will be a fine event for me. And there's actually no Cold War, so I was very happy about this. Instead it's the freedom of movement. That is actually quite a nice event for me, because before I seeded, my plan was to go for Mandela, even with paying the additional price for him, but now with the freedom of movement, I have the option to put the team sports into cannons, making it that I can take Mandela even without additional civil actions cost, which I think is very strong, and I think I have to go for Mandela here, because I'm just without a leader, and who knows when I will get the next leaders. I missed out on computers, so Pia could be nice, but Pia could also be very nice for Airren, and potentially maybe even for Wawrzyniec, who has pro sports in hand now, so I think I have to go for Mandela now, and this freedom of movement definitely makes it a lot easier for me to do this. I get this cannon for free, and then of course after going for Mandela I have to rebuild the team spots. And Mandela definitely helps me quite a lot, making up for losing the pyramids, so that I'm back at 7 civil actions again. And he also of course produces me some culture. And the H1 event on top is from Wawrzyniec, and it could maybe just be a colony or something, but I really thought it could be that it is the cultural influence, and as there are not that many events left with Bach, that could definitely be a nice event for him. And so it's also nice that I get some additional culture production going immediately now from losing pyramids and from getting Mandela. And then it was not that easy for me to decide what I should do with this turn, and my opinion on what I should do actually switched quite some times. First I thought, now that I'm able to get Mandela cheaper, I can use it to take the red cross. That wasn't possible before when I had to pay 4 civil actions to take Mandela. So I could take the red cross and then maybe either take satellites, or I could maybe build one stage or something. But all of the players have enough food to build one stage, and then at the end I might just get 2 stages out of it. And then I thought I will pay 3 civil actions to grab it, 2 more civil actions and 6 food. All of the other players only have to pay 1 civil action and 3 food, and at the end I will, because there are also only 2 colonies, I will only get 8 more culture than the other players. And it just felt like that isn't that great of a deal for me, investing that much into only 8 culture and also food, which I could use maybe to increase my population. Maybe I could build another arena then. So because of that I thought a red cross probably isn't the right way to approach this H3. But then the question is, what else should I actually do at this turn? There are definitely fine things that I could do. I could grab the military buildup maybe and the satellites. Satellites for some impacts could be nice. The military buildup could just be very nice to have. Those resources in hand. I mean, I have this war. Maybe I can go for war at some point. So I think that could be a way to play it. Could maybe even think about military theory, but probably I would rather grab the military build-up. Maybe could even think about engineering, but I probably won't have enough science to go for engineering and another urban building, and just using it to save some resources when I maybe build another arena is maybe not big enough of a reason to go for it, because it would block me from going for more military techs. And yeah, so I thought that those options that are available for me are maybe not the most greatest one. Probably the military buildup would be the best. Maybe the engineering genius could also be considered, but I think the military buildup is probably the better card to pick here. And it could definitely be an idea. Just grab military buildup, maybe just increase pop, maybe just play Riff Idea, maybe just take the satellites. It would be a fine turn. But then I came back to the red cross again. First of all, because the other options weren't that great, and second of all, because while all of the other players have enough food to build one stage of it, it could still be that it isn't that nicely for them to do so. For example, Wawrzyniec, if he makes the decision to do the Hanging Gardens, then not increasing his population would be quite bad. And even if he maybe loses Machu Picchu, then not increasing his population definitely limits his options. Also for Genghisip, he has a full hand. The frugality will make sure that he can increase his population and make one space in his hand. If he uses 3 food to build in a red cross, then he doesn't have enough food to increase his population, making it more difficult to make space in his hand. And Airren, I mean, he can't increase his population anyway, so he maybe can just spend the 3 food, but he can still increase his population then in the following turn. But I thought it might actually be that all of the other players might not build a stage, meaning I will get more stages out of the red cross. And if they build a stage, at least it maybe makes their turn a little bit more awkward. And because of that, at the end, I made a decision to go for the red cross. And then I still have 1 civil action left. I could just build 1 stage, but I could also play the revolutionary idea. At the end, I made the decision to grab the satellites, because it's just a nice technology to have for a bunch of impacts. And no, sadly there are only 2 colonies, so the red cross isn't giving that much culture, but if I get 3 steps, then it might be quite nice. Maybe I can go for the red cross and then also for another H3 Wonder Lake, fast food chains or spaceflight. And then I draw the impact of science, which is maybe too big of a gamble to play it now, but it's definitely nice to keep it in hand, especially with being in last position. Airren offers the military alliance to Wawrzyniec, so both of them have 3 additional strength. He will take the efficient upgrade, takes the reserves as well, and takes the military build-up, develops the rifleman. That makes it possible that he can use the resources of Maria, but interestingly he only goes for 1 upgrade. He won't go for a 2nd upgrade, even though he could get this basically for only 1 resource, so that's interesting. He also wouldn't miss out on a draw. It's interesting. One reason might be that he will then be at 25 strength, and with me spending food on the red cross, it might be that I don't get stronger, because I might not want to invest my science into satellites yet. Meaning, if he goes up to 25 strength, he might not have a nice way to use the military build-up and might miss out on resources for that one. So, yeah, because of that, that could be a reason, but it's definitely an interesting decision. And interestingly, he doesn't build a step, so he might miss out on one, or maybe he's banking on that the other players won't go for a step. Wawrzyniec will lose the Hanging Gardens, doesn't want to lose the Machu Picchu. That definitely causes him some issues, but I mean, he still has Bach. Maybe he can just upgrade a last lap or do something else in order to avoid an uprising. And he will grab the revolutionary idea. He will actually disband this knight again, and then he will build one theater to fix his happy faces and increase his population, meaning that he as well won't build a step of the red cross. And it also means that I actually won't be able to finish it at my next turn, because already 2 players didn't build a step of it. And Wawrzyniec has now 13 culture production with Bach, so that's definitely quite a lot, and his culture lead will get bigger and bigger, which is definitely a bit of an issue. I also wasn't too happy about spaceflight and fast food chains already being revealed, because now I can't finish the red cross, meaning I can't probably grab either of those wonders, and then the remaining ones are maybe not that great for me. And with having the revolutionary idea, Wawrzyniec has no enough science to go for Air Force at some point, which could be very important for him. Genghisip seeds, and there's indeed a cultural influence, and that of course is now very nice for Wawrzyniec. It's basically like a very strong impact for him. At least I get the second boost culture out of it. Genghisip uses the freedom of movement. Basically, we can also take a look at what the other players did with the freedom of movement, because Airren actually put a swordsman into alchemy. Wawrzyniec used it to put an agriculture into drama, so like this he got that many dramas going, and Genghisip used it to put an warrior into bread and circuses. He will play the frugality. Oh, and of course, I explained this of course wrong. I think I didn't make the mistake during the game, but now during the replay analysis, of course he can just use the frugality and afterwards build a stage of the red cross. So it isn't. It was likely that he will build a stage. So I was mainly thinking about Wawrzyniec, I think, back during the game. And then he builds one stage of my red cross, takes the fast food chains, and takes the engineering genius. So he has 2 engineering geniuses in hand, and with that he might have enough resource to finish the fast food chains, even though he is on bronze mines. And he also goes for one more knight, meaning that his plan is maybe to transition into the Conquistadors tactic at some point. He isn't grabbing the air forces, which is maybe a little bit greedy. Maybe he also could consider going for mobile artillery, but with having that many swordsmen, the Conquistadors might be the better tactic for him, especially with also not having that many resources. Now, this turn, sadly, I can't finish the red cross, which makes this turn a little bit awkward because I can't get out of corruption, but on the other hand, I was happy to at least be able to get 3 stages out of it. And so I definitely want to build 3 stages now, and not giving the other players the chance to build on it. Of course, Airren will be able to build on it. Then I have 4 civil actions left. I want to take the military theory. It is the second copy. I have a revolutionary idea in hand, I have a war in hand, so that definitely could open up some options for me. And then I have 3 civil actions left, and of course a logical move could be to just take the air forces. Maybe it makes it even more likely that I will be able to go for war at some point. I might have enough science to go for military theory and for air forces. And that definitely could be big enough of an argument to go for the air forces. But with having spent that much food on the red cross the next turn, it could be quite awkward if I can't increase my population. I probably would have corruption again. I can't really do anything. Then I maybe, if I take the air forces now, I maybe can play ref idea, maybe I can develop one of those techs, but then I could also have some hand space issues. And because of that, I actually made the decision to grab the reserves here, because I can play it for food, increase my population, maybe build an arena, which is nice for Mandela. And at the moment, it also is looking like my opponents are not threatening that much strength. Genghisip doesn't have that much resources at the moment, only 3 military actions. Wawrzyniec won't threaten anything. Airren is probably the most threatening players, because if he has a modern army, but at least I've already drawn one of those copies, and if he gets Air Force, definitely some potential. But so maybe I should take the Air Force away, but it's the first copy. If it would be the last copy, or maybe even the second last copy, I would probably take it. But here I rather went for the reserves, because it could be annoying if I can't increase my population at the next turn. But maybe it's the safer pick to just go for Air Forces. No, so I'm not sure about this, but the reserves can definitely be very useful for me at the next turn. and sadly because I can't finish direct draw space flight isn't an option for me, but it might also be too greedy to take it now. I draw a second war, so I have another war in hand, but I think I probably can only go for one war because it will take some time, even if I get another copy of Air Force now to have enough science to go for all of this. But the Impact of Harmony could maybe be something that I can make work. Airren seeds, and there's actually the Iconoclasm reveal. So for a long time I was the only player without a leader, and now I'm the only player with a leader. But it won't last for long, but in general I was happy about this, especially Wawrzyniec losing Bach is quite nice. And then Airren grabs the Air Forces, goes for Pierre, so he has a leader immediately again, and then he will finish the red cross for me, which also gets him out of corruption. Then Wawrzyniec will play the revolutionary idea, goes for Chaplain, so he also gets new lead immediately, and Chaplain also is quite helpful because of the additional happy phases, he increases his population, and then doesn't build any additional unit yet. With that he has 15 resources left, 13 science, so he is threatening to go for 2 air forces, which would put him at 47 strength. Genghisip seeds, and a popularization of science is revealed. Airren gets the most out of it because after losing the Universitas he used the freedom to put another work into alchemy, but at least they get the second most culture out of it. Genghisip then goes for computers, upgrades 1, which I thought is maybe a little bit greedy. Maybe he also has to play it a little bit greedy, because he has now really not a lot of resources left, so he could definitely be a little bit in danger. On the other hand, with 3 resources, he can build one knight, copy to the Conquistador's tactic that actually would already give him plus 11 strength. He would be at 41, so it's not like he can't do anything, but it's maybe a little bit greedy to go for the computers. But he maybe has to do something. He has hand space issues. Sid Meier's in the row. He probably wants to have a new leader, so he goes for him now, meaning that he actually goes down in the science production now, but at least he gets some additional culture production from Sid Meier. And then he takes the fission upgrade for the next upgrade and uses the engineering genius to build one stage on the fast food chains. At my turn, I could maybe seed, but with the plans that I made for my next turns, I thought that I probably shouldn't seed here, because the Impact of Harmony might not be that great for me. There is another copy of Air Force. I can use the reserves now to increase my population, and I still get one more copy of Air, and I still have another chance to grab the Air Forces. And with Genghisip just spending a lot of resources, with Wawrzyniec at least having a shot at not getting the Air Forces, I wanted to prepare to go for war now. First of all, I played the reserves for food. I can increase my population now, and at some point I will need happy faces, so why not just build him now and also get some additional culture out of Mandela. And then I can take the Air Forces, and in 2 turns I will have enough science with the revolutionary idea to go for military theory and for Air Forces. And I also will have enough resources to at least go for 1 more knight and 2 Air Forces, and that would put me together with the military theory at, I think, 59 strength. So that's definitely quite something, and might be difficult to Genghisip to get at more strength, and if Wawrzyniec misses out on the Air Forces, it might also be difficult for him to get enough strength to defend against us. It hopefully will make me safe from any wars from Airren. But I think with having military theory and this mobile artillery tactic, I was relatively safe already before. And then I have 1 civil action left, and I just use it to play the revolutionary idea. I don't need any of those techs really, because I will go, if it goes according to plan, will go for military theory for Air Forces, and then I have not really enough science left for another tech. And even if I get a revolutionary idea or something, then I probably will just go for the satellites that I have in hand. So I could have maybe seen an Impact of Harmony, it's fine now, but if I will go for this war, I will have to delete some stuff, and then my Harmony might be worse again. Also, Impact of Science I didn't want to commit to yet, and so I just didn't use my politics phase here. And when we take a look at the overview after my turn, we can see that I actually have now the second most culture, and I still have a fine position. I hopefully will be able to go for war against either Wawrzyniec or Genghisip, so I was not unhappy about my position here, but Wawrzyniec still is a bit of a culture lead, and so if he gets the Air Forces, it might be hard to catch him, but I'm also not that much behind him actually. Airren uses the Olympic Games, so he's also not that much behind in culture any longer, and the Arms Industry is revealed, which gives him 6 additional resources. I at least get 2 out of this, but Airren definitely gets the most out of it. Uses the reserves for food, increases his population 2 times, builds 1 more bread and circuses for the happy face, and of course also for more culture with beer, takes the movies, develops the air forces, and then plays the military build-up, can use it for 9 resources, and then he can just use those resources to build an air force and to go for an upgrade. He doesn't reveal the modern army tactic yet, so maybe he hasn't, or maybe he wants to get more draws in, but he still is at 38 strength now, and he has enough resource to go for 1 cannon and 1 cavalryman at the next turn, which would put him at plus 13, so at 51 strength if I didn't miscalculate. Wawrzyniec just goes for communism revolution. There's no air force that he can grab, and so with the revolution he makes sure that there are only very few cards revealed after his turn, making it more likely that he can go for air forces, and he also still has enough science to go for air forces, and then just is more flexible with having more actions at his next turn. And he goes for a rifleman to do something. Maybe he needs this to defend himself. Still needs this, keeps this H2 card in hand. Maybe it means that he has no H3 defense card. And even though he only revealed 1 new card, the air forces are available now for Genghisip on his turn. So that actually is a little bit unlucky for Wawrzyniec, and that will now be interesting to see whether Genghisip will go for the air forces. First of all, there's the vast territory revealed, and I definitely have to think about if I even want to bid for this, because if I bid too much, then I maybe can't go for this war that I have planned, and then it might not really be worth it to actually win it. On the other hand, it's also a nice colony for Mandela. It will produce me some more culture, and I came to the conclusion that I am willing, or that I can bid 1 knight for this, because even if I bid 1 knight, we can take a look at my turn after I win this. I still have enough resources left to go for 3 armies and 2 air forces. And it also means that I have to destroy 1 less thing if I have to go for the war. So I was very happy winning this colony for just 1 knight. I also have to send my colonization card, because I have now 14 plus 6 is 20 resources. So I will be able to build 2 more knights and 2 more air forces. I have just enough resource for that. Of course, there's also a chance at least that I will maybe get a reserves or something like this. One thing that I had to think about is if I can get out of corruption, because if I can't get out of corruption, and I of course don't have enough science for it, but I will be able to do this with going for air forces. So sadly I can't go for military theory first in order to draw more cards and just go for 2 knights, but I will be able to get out of corruption with going for air forces. Now it's Genghisip's turn. He goes for the next upgrade, making it that he gets more value out of Sid Meier. And he will grab the reserves. He won't grab the air forces, which is an interesting decision. With not having the air forces, he's definitely the bigger war target now. If there would be the knowledge that Wawrzyniec misses out on it, then he definitely would be then Wawrzyniec would maybe be in bigger danger. Maybe he could still do something with bro sports and just going for more armies, but it definitely would be more difficult to defend himself. And Genghisip, I mean, without the reserves, he has only very few resources. The Air Force maybe doesn't even help him that much, and of course the reserves might help him finishing the wonder. So I definitely can understand why he wants to go for the reserves here, but it's just to deny this Air Force to Wawrzyniec might be worth it to maybe take it. But it's of course a difficult decision, and as I said, it doesn't maybe do that much for him, because going for military theory and 1 more knight copying conquistadors is probably the best he can do. Anyway, the reserves might even make his military potential bigger, so it would only be denial, but maybe denial that could be worth it, but it's probably a very close decision. Then he increases his population, and to get out of corruption builds 1 bread and circuses. Can't really go for war this turn. I mean, Genghisip would lose for strength because the pact would get cancelled. But there are the Olympic Games ongoing, and I couldn't really make the war really big, and so I rather wanted to go for a war. Then at the following turn, I still also didn't want to see it any impact, because the impact of harmony I could maybe see it now, but at the next turn I will destroy 1 lab, and then it could just be revealed. My plan is to go for harmony of 20 at the end, but I might have harmony of 12 for a while, and it could just be revealed then, and the impact of science also will be bad for a while and might not be good enough at the end. So I didn't see it again. And then I increased my population. I can increase it 2 times, as you can see after building one knight. Just building another knight isn't enough, so I have to build 1 air force to get out of corruption, which sadly means missing out on 1 draw, but at least it's only 1 draw, and it makes sure that I can get out of corruption. And then I have 4 civil actions left. And my plan definitely was to go for war, because I thought it should be likely that this war is worth it, even though I have maybe to destroy 1 thing, and my plan was to destroy the alchemy, because then I have 6 resources in my last turn, and I can maybe delete 2 units then again to rebuild maybe 2 religions for 1 more happy face for Mandela, and to just make my harmony 20. If I delete a mine at my next turn, I will only have 4 resources at my last turn, meaning I haven't enough resource to build a farm or a mine and an urban building, meaning I won't be able to go for a harmony of 20. Yeah, so my plan was to destroy the alchemy at the next turn. And the question was what to do with the 4 civil actions. I thought about grabbing one of those wonders. The United Nations could also still make sense for myself. Maybe I could even not go for the war. But the thing is, I would have to invest all of my resources into it. Meaning that I maybe can't go for nice harmony. Of course, maybe I get this last copy of reserves, but I definitely don't know this. And maybe I could still get a certain growth, but I also don't know this. And it's maybe even less likely. So I would spend basically everything into United Nations, and if I go for the war, I have to destroy the slab, but I also will be able to rebuild some stuff at the last turns, and I thought the war should be better. But I could maybe take it just to keep it as an option, just in case Genghisip somehow prepares himself well enough to be able to defend against the war. Then I have this as an alternative option. And it could also be a denial. Airren maybe could go for it. I also thought about grabbing the Hollywood, because the United Nations isn't that great anyway for either for Airren and for Wawrzyniec, but a Hollywood could be nice for Wawrzyniec. He could go for 1 more drama, and then Hollywood would at least be 20 points, which would be a fine amount of points. But I just thought it should be very likely that I will be able to pull this war off. The military alliance pact is already offered, and I didn't really see a way for Genghisip how he will be able to defend himself, even if he goes for military theory. 1 more knight copies conquistadors, and even if he goes for another army, then I would still win the war, and it would be very costly for him. And another thing why I thought that I hopefully will get a relatively strong war in is that he has those fast food chains, and those fast food chains are actually quite strong for him. So if I declare war on him, then instead of destroying everything for maybe another army, it just might not be worth it, because he can maybe still finish the wonder instead, and this 1 more army wouldn't be that much strength. So I was hoping that because of that, the war might actually be quite big, and I was quite confident that the war will be able to happen. And because of that, I didn't want to have a wonder just as an alternative option, and also I thought that denying it might not really be necessary. I mean, maybe it could be nice to deny the Hollywood, but instead I just rather went for the endowment. I could go for the urban growth, but it doesn't open up that much more options for my last turns. I rather just wanted to go for the endowment, which will hopefully give me 4 culture, but at least it should give me 2 culture, so some more culture that I can get in addition to the war, instead of just getting something as an alternative for the war. And then I have 1 more civil action, and the best technology to take for me is probably the mechanized agriculture. First of all, it's a denial from Airren, because he's just enough science to go for it and can maybe do something with it. Can't go for any of the other tags. And if I should go for military theory the next turn, there are still 2 revolutionary ideas left. If I get both of them, which is maybe not likely but possible, then I have enough science to go for satellites and mechanized agriculture at my last turn. So that's probably the best technology for me to take, but it could also be an idea to just take the oil, because that maybe makes it more likely that there will still be H3 at the next turn. If the H doesn't end before my next turn, it means that I get 1 more culture out of Mandela, and it means that I get 1 more draw in, which could mean that I could potentially draw something nice. I will go for a war, but I should still get 2 draws in. So because of that, I didn't rather want for the oil, because it should be unlikely that I get both revolutionary ideas, and if I only get 1, then going for satellites might make more sense. And it is maybe a denial for Airren, but it's also not that important of a denial, I thought. I thought that maybe if I take MacAg, then Hollywood is available for cheaper for Airren, which maybe makes it more likely that he will take it away. but I thought it's too small of a reason to take it. But maybe it would have been better to take it, because it should be relatively likely that the age will end anyway. And also I actually made a mistake, because I thought if I get both revolutionary ideas, I will still be able to go for satellites and oil at the last turn, but I forgot that I will destroy this lab, so I made a calculation mistake here. And without this, maybe I would have gone for Mag Egg. Maybe I should even just not take the oil if I want to take less cards from the row, because now the oil won't do anything anyway. I will go for military theory. If I get two revolutionary ideas, I still can't go for satellites and oil, and I will rather go for satellites than for oil. So it maybe would even be better to just float the last civil action, because if the age shouldn't end, then I might have maybe some small hand space issues now. Probably not really big ones, but maybe some small ones. So just skipping the last CA is maybe better than taking the oil here, but probably just taking Meg Egg is better than taking the oil, and also better than than not using the last civil action. I draw one more colonization card and a plunder. And Airren is the first one to go for war. He goes for a war of culture against Genghisip. And interestingly, he will deny the Hollywood. I was very happy to see this. That means that he has to invest 3 civil actions for nothing for himself. And it takes a strong option away from Wawrzyniec. He will develop the architecture, so he invests into this probably just for some impacts, like impact of progress or impact of variety. Genghisip seeded 4 impacts in already actually. And impact of variety and impact of progress definitely could be impacts that he has seeded. And then Airren increases his population, goes for one more cannon. He doesn't go for another cavalryman because he has the positional army, and with that he has also 51 strength. And it should be enough to win the war. Wawrzyniec seeds and the impact of industries on top, which is actually nice impact for me. It was seeded by Genghisip, and with the 3 culture of getting it of seeding, it was still worth it for him to play it, but now of course it's good for me and for Wawrzyniec. Then Wawrzyniec will take the air forces. That's definitely something that he has to do. Now he should be relatively safe from a war, increases his population, builds even a 4th drama, and then takes the rockets in the urban growth, and he has just enough resources to build 2 more knights for another army and another air force. Genghisip seeds. The last H2 event is revealed. It's the international negotiations. That one was seeded by Airren, I think. And Genghisip will pay 3 food to Airren. Then he will increase his population, develops the military theory, builds 1 more knight, copies to the Conquistadors. Tactic is now at 47 strength, but the age will end, and then he will lose the Promise of Military Protection pack, meaning that he will lose 4 strength after his turn. And he will take Patriotism in reserves, taking all of the resource cards that he can get, but it means that I actually will be able to take 2 revolutionary ideas, and the age would have ended anyway, so I was a little bit sad about not having taken the mechanized agriculture, but it's maybe also not too bad, because it only makes a difference if the impact of tech is in there. But there are also already a lot of impact seeded, so that could definitely be possible. And this turn, it is my turn to go for the war, and I go for a war against Genghisip. That should just be the best target, because as I said, the fast food chains will give him a lot of points, and he can probably even finish the fast food chains and build 1 unit. So going for another army would maybe only give him +9 strength, and that's only a 18 culture swing against me. So even if we take a look at the swing, it's even fewer points, still fewer points than finishing the fast food chains. And if we compare it against the others, then for finishing the fast food chains makes even more sense. So because of that, I was hoping that Genghisip won't increase his strength by a lot. He has enough resource to even go for 1 army and another outdated army, but he doesn't have enough civil actions to make that work. I thought about going for a war against Wawrzyniec even, because I mean he has just enough resource to go for 2 knights and 1 air force, and that would put him at 59 strength, so we would tie with the war. There's maybe a very small chance that Airren would cancel the military alliance, but I don't think he would do this, or I definitely can't count on that. However, Wawrzyniec, while he can tie the war, he could maybe, or he would have to, destroy a bunch of stuff. He has to destroy things already only to avoid an uprising, and then he has to destroy 3 more things, meaning that he really has to destroy basically everything. meaning that his impacts will be bad, and in particular the impact of Harmony, which I will be able to make 20 at my last turn, would probably only be 4 for him then. So I wouldn't gain any culture from the war, but I would get culture from just making this impact very big. The thing is, Airren will steal some culture from Genghisip now. If I don't steal culture from the war, there's just the danger that maybe Airren will overtake me then. And if Genghisip finishes the wonder, then hopefully the war against Genghisip will be big. That it also will be nice against Wawrzyniec, but it was something interesting to think about. Interesting option. This turn I developed a military theory. I can increase my population once normally, then it will destroy the lab as I said, so that I have 6 resources at the last turn, being able to make my Harmony 20 to make it an impact that I can maybe see it. I could take both the revolutionary ideas, but with not having Mag-Attic in hand, it sadly doesn't make a lot of sense. And so instead I just went for the Bro Sports as a denial. Airren has 7 science. He sadly has the Mag-Act now, so he can develop attack anyway, but the Bro Sports with having Elven Growth and Efficient Upgrade in hand could definitely do a lot of stuff, prepare him for a lot of impacts, and so I just thought it could deny him some options. I thought about taking computers. Maybe Impact of Science could get an option, so that could also be an idea, but I would have to develop it then instead of the satellites, and as I said, Impact of Progress could definitely be something Genghisip has seeded, and it could be a strong impact to catch up on what's needed as well. Hopefully, if it is in there, it will be revealed after I will go for satellites. Impact of Variety could also be in there. And at the moment, Airren is 6 science production, Genghisip 8, so even if I go for an upgrade to computers, I still would at the moment have the 3rd best science production, and then it would only be a good impact against Wawrzyniec, and the impact of Harmony also is hopefully will be a nice impact against Wawrzyniec. And yeah, if Wawrzyniec is greedy and maybe fixes his Harmony, then maybe I can just try an armed intervention against him. Then it's the last round. Airren will steal 13 culture from Genghisip. Then the impact of population is open. I was just very happy to not see impact of progress, and it's a fine impact for me, a good one for Genghisip, but with getting the second war against him, he probably is maybe not out of the game. He can still get a nice wonder, has seeded a lot of impacts. Impact of progress might be very strong for him, but he might not be a contender for the first place any longer. And so I was fine with him getting a strong impact, and I'm at least I have the second strongest position in this one together with Wawrzyniec. Airren will go for some farm upgrades, uses the efficient upgrade. He will build one mine, and then he actually destroys the lab, building one religion. So taking the computers could have been actually quite nice now. And yeah, so sadly I have not taken them. Maybe I could have foreseen it that he will destroy lab. That will be better for his Harmony now. For his variety, for his Harmony, for his balance with being that having this mine. So yeah, maybe I could have foreseen it, but the Pro Sports maybe could have also done a lot of things for him. Yeah, but maybe it could have been more important to have this option. But yeah, as I said, it's only possible because he destroys one of his labs now. Wawrzyniec destroys a bunch of stuff, builds one more religion, could be nice for variety, for happiness, and just produce one culture, builds one air force, and then he destroys the lab, so he makes this variety weaker again, but again, sadly, he fixes his Harmony, and also he destroyed a mine, but Impact of Industry is out, and Impact of Balance is bad anyway, so having another farm definitely makes sense. And then he sadly has some free civil actions, so he will take the computers away, so that card won't be available for me. And Genghisip is in war with me, but it's still nice to have some tourism going on, so he offers me the international tourism. And yeah, I mean, we just probably gain both 2 culture out of, unless Genghisip won't finish the wonder, but even then at least I get 1 additional culture out of it. Maybe it gives him a very, very small additional incentive to not finish the wonder, because I will get then 1 more culture reduction, but that should not make the difference for his decision, so I definitely accept this pact. And he will go for the civil service, so he has an even bigger potential impact of progress. And then he will use the engineering genius. Won't even build a unit, he could have done it. Instead he wants to have the religion, maybe for impact of happiness or variety, and just for some culture reduction. It might be better for him than the 2 additional strength from the war. And then he will finish the fast food chains for 25 points, and I will be able to steal a bunch of culture from him. And then I steal the culture, and for my turn, it was the question, do I want to seed Impact of Harmony or do I want to try an aggression? Both Wawrzyniec and Genghisip can defend against an aggression with 2 defense cards. Both of them have drawn a lot of cards. I mean, Wawrzyniec kept his H2 card in hand for quite a while, always made sure that they can defend only with an H2 defense card, so it could be an indicator that he doesn't have that many H3 defense cards, but I have an Impact of Harmony that will be nice against Wawrzyniec. I will be able to get +3 from seeding, +4 from the impact. There is the danger that there will be an impact open that will be improved. I was especially afraid of Impact of Progress, but I didn't make a decision to seed. And Impact of Agriculture is revealed. Not the greatest impact for me, but also not a really bad one. And also not an impact that will be improved during my turn, which is maybe the most important thing. My turn I will be able to play an Endowment, sadly only for 2 culture. Then I made a decision to develop the satellites, because this Impact of Progress really could be a way how I can maybe catch up to Wawrzyniec. I destroy both units, and with having the satellites, I still am the strongest now, which is another advantage of having the satellites. I definitely want to build 1 religion, because it's nice for variety. It gives me 1 additional culture reduction, and 1 also with Mandela. Makes my Impact of Happiness better, but for this another population that I have now, it's definitely the question if I want to put this into religion or not. Putting it into religion just gives me 1 culture reduction, so that's fine. But I could also put it into the lab, increasing my Impact of Balance by 2. And, I mean, there are quite a lot of impact seeded, some are already out. Airren built his mine, he could have built another farm, and there was Impact of Agriculture, maybe it wasn't seeded by him, but he built his mine, so I thought maybe that's an indicator that Impact of Balance isn't there. Maybe he just was hoping that one of the other players seeded Impact of Balance or just wanted to prepare for it. And yeah, Genghisip, who seeded the most impacts, his Impact of Balance is not great, but seedable, so definitely we could have seeded it. And at the end, the deciding factor, what I want to do, was that the Impact of Balance is just a nice impact against Wawrzyniec. I will have 141 culture after my turn, meaning I have a good lead before Airren, hopefully making sure that I have very good chances to be at the 2nd place, but I could have also still have a shot for the 1st place. And for that I need some nice impacts, and Impact of Balance could be one of those nice impacts, so I wanted to play for my outs for the 1st place. I just wanted to play for the 1st place here, and I think building this lab is better when I want to play for the 1st place, even though it could also just give me 0 culture, but it has the potential to give me 2 culture. Sadly, it doesn't make any difference for the impact of science. The religion also doesn't make any difference for the impact of culture, so those are of course important things that I have to check. And then I can just take those cards, and that's the end of my turn. And when we take a look at the culture before the final impact evaluation, we can see that Wawrzyniec is a 12 culture lead before me, Airren is 18 culture behind me, and Genghisip is quite a lot behind, but maybe not that much that it is impossible for him to catch up, especially with some impacts like Impact of Progress. No, I think I am not that badly prepared for impacts, but there's one impact that could be very bad. It's the impact of culture. It would be +15 for Wawrzyniec compared to against me. So if this is there, then I probably don't have good chances to finish at the 1st place, but if it isn't in there, then maybe I have a shot. The first impact is the impact of colonies, so that impact is in there. And Genghisip gains 6 culture out of it, so it's a nice impact for me. Impact of 1 loss is a bit better for Wawrzyniec than for me, so he has now an 11 culture lead, and Genghisip catches up to Airren a little bit. There's the impact of tech, so sadly I wasn't able to develop those 2 technologies, but it still gives me +4 culture against Wawrzyniec, meaning I'm only 7 culture behind him, and also Genghisip catches up a little bit again to Airren. There is the impact of government, and again I catch up a little bit, it's just always a little bit to Wawrzyniec. I'm only 5 culture behind him now, and also Genghisip again catches up a little bit. It's only 18 culture behind Airren, so it's definitely not impossible for him to catch up to him, especially if there is still the impact of progress. But sadly there's the impact of culture, and with that it will be very difficult for me to catch up to Wawrzyniec. Even with an impact of progress it wouldn't be enough. And Genghisip catches even again up to Airren. But yeah, maybe for him the impact of progress would be enough to overtake Airren, but the last impact is the impact of harmony from me. +16 for Wawrzyniec, +20 for myself, +16 for Airren, and +20 for Genghisip. So at the end, I finish at a second position. Wawrzyniec is able to win this game. Airren is at a third position, and Genghisip at a fourth. But it is actually quite nice. Yeah, quite nice from Genghisip to still be so close behind Airren, even though he got hit by the two wars. So that definitely thought he would maybe be more behind after those two wars. Yeah. Overall, I'm very happy about my second place because there were situations in H2 where I was really vulnerable and it could have definitely gone in a very bad direction for me. And it definitely, I also got hit quite a bit by those two infiltrates, especially with losing Newton, but I didn't get hit by any other aggression, allowing myself to stabilize. And then, yeah, at least I had those iron mines going, and I thought, then I think the Airren got hit by the war, had maybe even the best economy. Wawrzyniec had a cultural lead, he went for Bach. This cultural influence definitely was very nice for him. And then he had a big cultural lead, he got the Air Force at the end. And I think it also was good that I got the Air Forces, and it maybe was a mistake to take the reserves. It just felt very, very bad not being able to increase population. And there were still two other copies. But without it, I wouldn't be able to go for the war. Maybe I still would be able to defend myself. Maybe I then could go for the United Nations. Or maybe I could still finish at the second place. But this war definitely brought me very close to the first place. So maybe I should have just taken the Air Force. But then I wouldn't be able to build additional arena. So yeah, that's definitely a tough choice. Maybe my impact of harmony wouldn't be that great. And so of course now that I got the second copy of Air Force, I think taking reserves was worth it. But I could have seen at this point already maybe that a war could be possible, and with that maybe I should have taken the Air Force from the beginning. But I was then lucky to get a second copy, and it worked out for me to take the reserves. Yeah, and then I think one of the key moments in this game was definitely when I see the call to arms was revealed, which gave me the mobile artillery. So I'm still not sure how bad it actually was, because as I said, also without deleting this warrior, I still would have been in a dangerous position with strength-wise. So at least I had this tactic done. And then I made this probably questionable decision to go for deleting the warrior. It was an interesting move. It allowed me to go for iron mines. It definitely did something. But then I sadly got hit by some aggressions, but at least not by some aggressions that removed the possibility for me to go for cannons, and then with that I could stabilize my position and went for the red cross, which wasn't that great, but also gave me some additional points. And I think also getting Mandela early was quite important. The freedom of movement just came at the right time, and yeah, so there were definitely some nice moments for me. Sadly, it wasn't enough to be at the first place, but as I said, I'm very happy about my second place in this game with that strong opponents. Yeah, so a very interesting game. I hope this was interesting for you, and we can also take a look at the standings right now. First, we can also take a look at other games that have been finished where I wasn't involved. And there's the game that I told you about in the beginning, where Wawrzyniec was able to win against Airren PV4 and Footloop. And then there was also one game where Genghisip was able to win against Payada, Wawrzyniec in PV4. Now we have this game that you have just seen, and with that the standings are the following. Wawrzyniec has won 2 4-player games, and with that he definitely has a strong position, probably the strongest, with 4 games finished and 15 points. Genghisip also has a fine position, with having also 4 games finished and 11 points, is 4 points behind Wawrzyniec, but that is definitely not that big of a gap that it is impossible to catch up. Footloop also still has a very fine position after having won the first 2 3-player games. He lost 1 4-player game, but because of the 2 wins he still is at 10 points with only 3 games finished. With the second place I also am only very close behind Footloop with also 3 games finished and 9 points. And if I should win my next game, then I'm also very close to Wawrzyniec. And then PV4 and Payada with the 4 games finished with 6 and 5 points, and Airren has 3 games finished and only 5 points, but he has 1 game less finished than PV4 and Payada, so he definitely with 1 win can also go up to 11 points, for example, even though he has already finished 3 4-player games, so he only has 1 4-player game left and a lot of 3-player games, but he definitely has still enough games left to also catch up and to still have a shot at winning this season. But this season definitely might be very close. As I said, if I win my next game, I might be at 15 or 14 points, depending on whether this is a 3 or 4 player game. And then I definitely am still in a very nice position to win the league. If I lose my next game, then I have still 9 points with 4 games finished, and PP4 and Payada, who probably have the worst position at the moment, still have a relatively fine amount of points, so they are not that much behind, and I would then only be 3 and 4 points ahead of them. So if I lose my next game, then I also could be in danger of getting relegated. So that could turn out to be a very close season. It should be very interesting, and I hope you're excited for the next games. Yeah, and then, as I said, I hope it was an interesting game for you with some very strong opponents. And then, yeah, have a nice time. Also, have a good start into the new year. And then see you in the next video.